Hello everyone, Jacob here. In the past two lessons we've been talking about possible situations in the past. Alright, so we saw would have PP, which means 했었더라면 뭐뭐 했었을거야. We also saw could have PP, which means 했었더라면 할 수 있었을거야. Okay, and today we're going to talk about the last structure kind of that's similar, might have PP if subject, verb, object, which means 뭐뭐 했었더라면 뭐뭐 할 수도 있었을 거야. Okay, so again, this is used to talk about a possibility in the past, a possible situation in the past. And let's review real quick how we use might. You probably know that we can use might in this way. Might, a verb, if subject, verb, object means 뭐뭐 하면 뭐뭐 할 수도 있어. Alright? So again, this structure right here is actually used to talk about a possibility in the future. Something that you maybe will do in the future. But might have PP if, and then a full sentence, is to talk about a possible situation in the past. Something that maybe you would have done in the past. All right, all of that is complicated again, so let's just look at some examples. Korea might have won if Park Ji-sung had played. Korea might have won if Park Ji-sung had played. So again, we're going back to the same example that we used in the last two videos, but we are changing would, could to might. Might have PP, might have won if Park Ji-sung had played. And again, try and remember to use had PP, the had PP tense here. All right. So what does this mean? Well, we saw how would have won means 이겼었을거야. Could have won means 이길 수 있었을거야. Might have won means 이길 수도 있었을거야. Okay, so actually all of these are very, very similar. And if you say Korea would have won, Korea could have won, or Korea might have won, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. In this sentence, it doesn't really change. I would say that would is the strongest. You sound very certain. Could, you sound a little bit less certain, and might, you really aren't sure. You're kind of saying maybe. Okay, so might is actually very similar to maybe. Okay, so what does this mean? Again, 박지성이 뛰었더라면 한국이 이길 수도 있었을 거야. Okay, alright, so now let's just move on. Let's try and make this video a little bit quicker. I'm getting sick of talking about this could have PP, would have PP, might have PP structures. I really want to move on to talking about something else. So let's just look at two more examples and then we'll finish up. If my father hadn't been tall, I might not have been so tall. Okay, I am very, very tall. Anyone who knows me knows that I am very, very tall. Well, I think the reason that I'm really tall is that my father is tall. I'm actually taller than my father, but my father is quite tall as well. So I think that if my father hadn't been tall, I might not have been so tall. So here again we are using this same structure except with might have, or in this case it's negative, might not have been, and then we're using it with an adjective, might not have been so tall. And I'm actually changing the order. I'm putting if, this part of the sentence, at the beginning. If my father hadn't been so tall. Okay, so here actually, you know what, it doesn't really matter whether you say hadn't been or wasn't. To be honest, I don't think it really matters. If my father hadn't been tall, if my father wasn't tall, pretty much sounds the same. And to be honest, I think both are fine. Maybe hadn't been is more correct, but I think it's fine. And in fact, when people are speaking, often instead of using hadn't been, the had PP tense, they will just use the regular past tense. So even though it's good to try and be correct, don't worry too much about it, because even me or native speakers kind of make this mistake when they're speaking. All right, so let's move on to our last example. And in this case, I'm going to use it with a noun. I might not have become a teacher if I hadn't come to Korea. I might not have become a teacher if I hadn't come to Korea. I originally came to Korea to travel, but also to teach. But I hadn't really decided whether or not I wanted to become a teacher, if I wanted that to be kind of my career. But after living in Korea, after being in Korea for a long time, I decided, well, I want to stay in Korea and teach. So I might not have become a teacher if I hadn't come to Korea. Might not have become, or you could say been. Been is fine too. Here we're using become though. A teacher, so with a noun. If I hadn't come to Korea. Hadn't come. Again, this had PP tense. But again, like I was just saying in the last example, if I didn't come to Korea, well, I don't know if this is technically correct, but if you said this, I don't think it would really matter. I don't think anyone would really care. This is something that just people do when they're speaking, even though maybe it's not technically correct. All right? So that is pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about in this lesson. I wanted to make a quick lesson, so that's all I want to say. Just try and remember that all of these structures might have PP, could have PP, would have PP. Even though they are quite difficult to use, they are useful, and I think you really need to practice them a lot to get good at them. So I'll leave you to it, and I'll see you next time.